Last night was the night of, for one thing, to clarify what the president did and didn't do when it comes to COVID-19, the duplicity of other lawmakers who praised him one minute and were just having short-term memory loss and not giving him credit the next. It's also the story of personal stories, of interactions with the president that people don't really know about. And Steve Scalise and Congressman Jim Jordan join us right now, and they both have that, see the quiet side of the president when the cameras aren't around. Always great to see you. You always contribute to the show. But last night, I thought you contributed a personal story. Can we start with you, Congressman? When you talked about a call that the president made to you that got to become a family affair, here's how it sounded last night when you talked about your family and you going into your family after your nephew was killed in a car accident. Listen.
What I also appreciate about the president is something most Americans never get to see, how much he truly cares about people. Our family has seen it. 2 years ago, our nephew Eli was killed in a car accident. 3 days after the accident, I walked to the car to head up to Eli's parents' home when the president called. We talked about a few issues, and then he asked how the family was doing. I said, "They're doing okay, Mr. President, but it's tough." The president said, "Yeah, losing a loved one is always difficult." "What's his name?" the president asked. I walked through the door and said, "Todd, the president wants to talk to you." For the next 5 minutes, family and friends sat in complete silence as the president of the United States took time to talk to a dad who was hurting. That's the president I've gotten to know the last 4 years.
Congressman, why was it important for you to tell that story?
It just shows the side of the president most Americans never get to see. I've said this probably every speech I ever give around our district, around the country. I wish every single American could spend time with the President of the United States. You've all had the opportunity to do that. I've had the opportunity to do that. But when you're around him, there is a charisma, there is an energy, there is a passion that he has for the American people. He loves our law enforcement, our veterans, our military, and just regular families like ours. And it comes through, and it's so sad, but I really do wish that every American could spend some time with him, because you get to see a side that CNN will never tell you and the mainstream press will never tell you. But he's a good man who loves this country, and that's, as I said last night, that's why I'm going to work so hard to help him get reelected, and I know a lot of people around this country are going to do the same.
And Steve Scalise, you told a very personal story about the worst day in your life. It was after that leftist gunman tried to kill you at the congressional baseball practice over in Virginia. And rather than play the soundbite, tell the story.
Well, Steve, and all of you, good morning. Good to see you. And Jimmy shared is the same thing I've seen. Look, you know, I'd gotten shot that day. It happened to be the president's birthday, but they fly me to a hospital. I barely made it, and I was in a coma, but I was fighting for my life that night. My wife flew up with our kids from New Orleans, and they didn't know if I was going to make it through the night. It was an unbelievably tough night. And then the president and the first lady show up at the hospital and just spent quality time consoling my wife and taking care of my family. And he did that throughout the next 3 months that I was in the hospital. He would just call randomly to see how I was doing. And he cares about people, like Jim said. It's a genuineness. It's a, you know, he's fought for the forgotten men and women of this country that Washington had left behind. He doesn't hold well with them because they didn't vote. They just gave up on Washington because Washington gave up on them. And this president is fighting and delivered for them. And I got to see that side of him in a way that you really don't get to see in the mainstream media. And so I thought it was important to share that. I'm glad Jim shared it as well. You know, and then hearing Herschel, you know, sharing his story with Bernard Jones and Tim Scott, our former colleague. I mean, this is the side of the president that people need to get to see more. And I think they're going to see more of it this week. And that's really a very sharp contrast from Joe Biden in his 47 years in Washington.
Well, Nancy Pelosi was on another network, and we know that the president opposes mail-in voting, and she was talking about that very issue, and she called GOP lawmakers like yourselves domestic enemies. Listen to this.
We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States.
All right, so what do you think about that? I know President, he opposes universal mail-in voting. You want to weigh in on this? I'll start with you, Congressman Jordan.
Well, here's what the Democrats want. They want to count ballots after Election Day. And look what happened to the sponsor of their bill, Carolyn Maloney in New York, in her primary, June 23rd, Election Day. She wasn't declared the winner until 6 weeks later. They want that chaos. They want the confusion because they know the President of the United States is going to win on Election Day, but they want to keep counting, just like they did in New Jersey 4 weeks after their primary election. Imagine if it takes 6 weeks to figure out who won one congressional primary. Now they're talking about live ballots being mailed out to everyone, and then counting ballots after the president. Imagine the chaos that's going to have. That's the thing that scares me. So we want to get this cleared up and straightened up ahead of time. We want a fair and secure election, and the speaker saying the things she does not help things, only hurts things.
All right, and then Congressman Scalise?
Right, there's no place for that hypercharged language that she uses, you know, enemies of the state and all of this. I mean, like, that's the hypercharged language that led to that crazed gunman coming out trying to kill every Republican on the ball field. Why don't we focus on the issues? They don't want to talk about issues. But as Jim pointed out, I mean, we've seen this playbook before on these ballots. Look, in Louisiana, we sent an election commissioner to jail for voter fraud. This idea that it doesn't happen. If you mail millions of ballots to people who aren't even legally on the rolls, and that's what will happen. You ask any Secretary of State, every one of them has about 10% or more of people on their voting rolls that aren't properly registered, whether they moved or something else. And this idea that you're just going to have millions of ballots sitting around, and then weeks and weeks later, even in California last time, they were counting ballots 3 weeks later. People who won on election night lost 3 weeks later. We don't need that chaos. They want that chaos because it's what their party's all about right now.
Yeah, Joe Biden could be benefited by people having their vote actually counted. 558,000 ballots were rejected in the primary season in 2020. In 2016, 300,000 ballots were thrown out. How does either party benefit from that? But let's pivot and talk about COVID-19. Short-term memory loss, which is a lot of Democrats are suffering from, because in January and February, we were in an unprecedented situation. We were getting hit by something we still can't figure out to this day, this coronavirus. And as we try to ramp up and listen to scientists who told us not to wear masks for 2 or 3 months, and we hear different governors praise the president and then quickly do about face on that, it was up to the Republican Party to get together some tape, not some voiceover, but some tape, and put together the actual chain of events that led us through this pandemic, who hopefully we've gotten the best of. Let's watch.
Democrats, the media, and the World Health Organization got coronavirus wrong.
Everything is fine. Come to Chinatown.
Go about your lives, go about your business.
One leader took decisive action to save lives.
Promise made, promise kept. He is ready, willing, and able to help.
In our hour of need, you all literally are helping us in a big way.
I thought that was the most important tape of the day. This is where the president is underwater with the American people, according to the polls, handling the storm. It's important for people to see what people were saying at the time, Jim Jordan.
Yeah, no, exactly. This president cut off travel into the country from China. This president called out the World Health Organization, which was shilling and lying for China. And he did even something better. He said, we're not going to send you any more money. I mean, that's great. I love the line one of my colleagues had. We don't have to pay some organization to lie to us. They'll probably do it for free. So he stood up to them at the first stages when all the Democrats were saying something different. And now they're criticizing him for being a real leader throughout this entire thing. I thought it was appropriate that they got the truth out there right at the start of the convention last night as well, Brian.
Sure, it's hard to argue with what they actually said, and the RNC was simply reminding them. Meanwhile, Steve Scalise, I know you are down in Louisiana right now at your family home, battening down the hatches. As Louisiana and the Gulf Coast is preparing for what looks like a major hurricane, it could come ashore tomorrow night as a Cat 3, right?
Yeah, Hurricane Laura's coming in, went through Cuba, and is a big, big storm, as you said. We just had Tropical Storm Marco go through. Everybody here on the ground has been preparing, taking the necessary precautions. People in low-lying areas have already evacuated. So, look, we've unfortunately been through this before, but these are tough, resilient people in South Louisiana. They're ready for what's coming up. Pray for the best, but we're prepared for the worst.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to be with y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.